Today, I'll be chatting with the King of Swings, or Alex Lopiccolo. Alex has been educating pediatric therapists in sensory gyms for nearly a decade. His mission is to bring sensory integration therapy theory into the clinics. He educates, then demonstrates large motor movements in space in order to improve brain-body connection. Learning by doing is his favorite style of teaching. This way, therapists can better understand their own sensory processing so they can apply innovative activities with their special needs clients. Welcome, Alex Lopiccolo. This is exciting to have you. I've actually met you in person and had you at the clinic, so it's kind of fun to be able to pick your brain on an interview just one-on-one. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm very
Yeah. I'm going to go at this interview more from the clinic owner's mindset. I know a lot of people have asked you in the past, like what sensory integration and all that. I'm going to go at it just a little bit differently. But first, why don't you tell me what kind of inspired you to create Sensory Digest?
so I was working at a therapy clinic in Denver, Colorado. It was an old historic mansion turned into a OT music therapy and speech therapy clinic. And I was actually inside the sensory garden that the kids and I built. And I was thinking you know, the sensory integration realm, I didn't see there was good follow through with home programming. And I decided to start building home sensory gyms. And from there, I saw that there wasn't as much education on YouTube. There was just it talked about sensory integration therapy, but it didn't really provide what it looks like inside the clinic. So I started taping videos and started posting on the Facebook pediatric occupational therapist page. It got a lot of traction, and from there I was like, I want to create my own company and start expanding on sensory integration therapy.
Awesome. Yeah, because as therapists, we always want to know, well, how do you do that? What does it look like in a clinic session, right? So you nailed that one on the head by you just gave people what they wanted.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
go ahead.
found that there wasn't as much therapists really using social media for sensory integration therapy, so that's why I wanted to really showcase it to the public.
Okay. And did you work for Southpaw for a while as well?
Yeah, I was a subcontractor. They would send me equipment to tape videos and do Facebook Lives. So I would also just teach my King of Swings workshop and then do a Facebook Live showcasing their equipment.
Okay. Okay. So currently, do you just have Sensory Digest? Is that your main company that you're working?
Yes, so it's
Okay.
just me. I'm a LLC sole proprietor, and I'm the only one that answers on social media, and I try to take care of everything myself and be very personable with my clients.
And you are traveling the world. It looks like you're a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah, so once a month I will do an international workshop. It's 2 days, and I travel out there a couple days ahead of time, prepare the clinic, and then teach a 2-day workshop.
Hmm. Amazing. And does your family get to go with you?
Sometimes if it's really hard having kids come with me and be part of the trip, but if I can, I have them come along.
Okay. And so with your company, you're also designing therapy gyms for clinics as well, right? If so, my understanding is they give you the dimensions, kind of what they're looking for, and then you make a design.
Yes, so there I will design a clinic from the ground up, um, and then sometimes I'll just modify a clinic that's pre-existing. I will also design like suspension structures, platforms with slides and bolster slides,
Hmm.
um, rock walls, monkey bars, and a lot more. So it depends on what the clinic's, environment looks like, what their clientele is, and what supplies they are able to get, because, overseas, they're not able to necessarily get what we get here.
Right. So it sounds like you probably do a pretty extensive interview with the clinic owner, find out kind of what kind of clientele they see, and just to modify the equipment to meet their needs. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. So I work within their budget to figure out what we can get access to, and then sometimes we're suspending from the ceiling, sometimes we're
Mhm.
suspending from the walls, sometimes we're just do a freestanding structure, and sometimes it's out of wood, sometimes it's out of steel.
Okay. So you design it, then do you order the equipment and then travel to the facility and build it, or are those all optional?
That's always optional. I try to see what's easiest on the clinic owner.
Uh,
Sometimes it's I have to do a lot of the legwork. Sometimes they're like, yeah, we can, order the equipment. So overseas, I will tell them to order majority of the stuff. Sometimes I throw it inside some of it I throw in my luggage. And then when I get there, sometimes we go to a market and go find some lycra, and then we'll go to various stores around the area and try to find it local,
mhm.
and just to uh, prepare the clinic, getting ready for the workshop.
Okay. So you've been in a lot of clinics, right? Throughout your, what do you think is the thing that most clinics are really missing out on, or that they don't have that you're surprised about?
Sometimes clinics go chintzy or very they don't invest in gym mats. And I think that's one of the most important things, because say if you have one suspension point in the clinic and you only have one gym mat, you don't fall underneath the suspension. You can fall around the perimeter of the suspension. And I find that, we're basically inner space astronauts when we're working inside the clinic. And when you fall off, it's really important that we look at the children's safety, prevent injury and concussions.
So if you had a standard point of suspension, what perimeter would you recommend? Like how far out do they need to go?
I like to try to be within one suspension point, about 12 feet in diameter around
Wow.
each suspension point.
Okay. Besides the mats, is there anything that you see clinic owners are investing a lot of money in, let's say ball pits or I don't know, rock wall, something that you're like, that you don't typically use, or
Uh,
you find it's not real worth it?
Rock walls.
Really?
A lot of times rock walls, especially if it's like one panel, the kids climb up it, they climb down it, and then there's not as much motor planning involved. There's only maybe one or two routes to go up. Uh,
Mhm.
when there's multiple panels, or if it turns a corner, that's when you can get a lot out of it. I also like the rock wall holds by like Atomic
Okay.
climbing, that are obstacle course holds, where you can hang up a hula hoop where the child has to transverse sideways through it, or has to go over a pool noodle that sticks into the rock wall. And they just have really cool climbing holds. So I worked with them quite a few times.
Okay, so Atomic is just the climbing hold. It's not the company for the rock wall.
They also they make prefabricated rock walls, and a lot of times clinics will just get the rock wall holds and mount them themselves.
Okay. Um, Going back just a tiny bit. So when you design the structure, who holds the liability for that? Because I know that's a big thing with like swings, and that's why a lot of them are so expensive.
So each suspension structure is licensed or is insured. So uh, I've been working with fabricating them for the last 7 years, I think it is,
Mhm.
maybe 6 years, and haven't had any problems with them. They're very structurally secure, and I prefer them over suspending from the ceiling, because you don't know who built the actual structure of the building,
Right.
and there's always a possibility that a contractor that's installing it can do it incorrectly because they've
They don't
most
really get what
likely
we
never
do.
done
Right.
suspension. And there's a lot of force not just coming down from the suspension, but also laterally, um, which can cause stress on the structure of the building.
Right. Right. Okay. Um, so we personally had a training from you at Connect the Dots, and it was years ago, but it was amazing. And I just saw my therapist just kind of light up and get excited again. What do you feel like therapists get the most out of when you go?
That they are able to experience the sensation where if you're not able to learn how to really mm, grasp how you get the feedback from it, then you really don't understand how that child might be interpreting it.
Mhm.
So I find it really important that us therapists experience the sensation so we can grade the activities up and down for various types of um, diagnoses, and then also adapt and modify to meet the child's needs.
Mhm. So can you just kind of explain, maybe just like pick one thing that you would walk through with the course of what it might look like if a clinic owner brought you in? How'd you train their staff? What would that look like?
So typically, I would uh, like the day of the clinic
Sure. Yeah.
or the day of the workshop. Uh, Usually, we would have everything set up the day before. When I get in there, uh, I will just do some finishing touches, and then when the workshop starts, I will go. I'll give a little uh, brief intro of my journey into SI and also my childhood of how it's shaped me as a therapist today. And then I'll go into intro to sensory integration theory, and then we will go to um, the biomechanics. And because a lot of the children that we see have poor biomechanics and motor planning, atypical
Mhm.
motor patterns. And then I'll talk about what you'll typically see during assessments, such as supine flexion, prone extension, and a lot of the standardized assessments that we all use as OTs. And then from there, what we want to try to achieve during therapy, what we're looking for. So um, I I find that one thing that we don't really touch on in the university or even as therapists is breath work. So I talk a lot about oral motor breath work and how that really impacts sensory processing. And from there, we'll go into tactile. Um, I do lots of messy play recipes and lots of do-it-yourself types of deep pressure tactile items. And from there, we'll go into Lycra. Once we hit Lycra, we'll take a 15-minute therapy break because they're just they're trying to process all the information
Right.
that I go over. And then we start going through movement activities using proprioceptive, vestibular, and tactile, using Lycra. I make probably at least 20 different or more Lycra um, type of equipment,
Mhm.
which you don't buy from a therapy equipment company. I just make it on site and teach the therapist how to make it themselves. And then from there, we just go on to more gross motor activities. And when I'm overseas, I do a live treatment session. So when it's a 2-day workshop, even if the child doesn't speak English, I can communicate to them through body language and we'll go through different sensory motor activities, and you can see the therapist just get wowed on how I progress the child for independence and execution.
Okay, awesome. I know that it was, most workshops you go, you sit, you learn, it's a lot of theory, and then they give you some treatment. But I feel like as a therapist, we need to be able to model what we're asking them to do. If we don't want to do it, then we shouldn't be asking a child to do it, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that was a huge learning curve for a therapist. I don't know if you are noticing this too, but I'm noticing kind of a different trend of therapists coming out where they're not using as much equipment.
Yes, so I guess they're trying to be more minimalist with their type of treatment.
Mhm.
I, I think that's okay, but as long as you're trying to, uh, as long as it's powerful and it meets the child's needs, and you're goal driven to what the parents and the child are looking for.
Right. I think of it some of though, like when they come into a clinic where the equipment is available, there's just a lack of knowledge of how I would use this bolster swing or different ways to do that.
I learned from Teresa May Benson,
Mhm.
a pioneer in sensory integration therapy, is that one of the most important things as a therapist is understanding praxis
Mhm.
and understanding how to use one piece of equipment multiple different ways, so then you are able to make it novel and make it engaging for the child. So you're
Mhm.
not always having to change out equipment, which takes a lot of time. Uh, so a lot of times I'll use one piece of equipment and I'll layer different type of I might layer different equipment on top of it, but it's always that one piece of equipment that I'm using to have that child sustained engaged in that activity.
Right. And then we're teaching like ideational praxis with that as well for kids and pretend to play and just expanding that. Yeah.
And that's where I see a deficit in a lot of children nowadays, is because when they're bored, what do? Is they go to technology,
Right.
which there's no necessarily ideational praxis. It's great for children to get bored and be able to create um, things that are meaningful to them.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's been I've been a practitioner for a long time, and before kids would come into the clinic and it was like, it's like a candy store, right? There's all this stuff, and now there's just this different version of a child that comes in and it's like, I don't really know what to do with this. So we've
Yeah,
really got to teach it.
I mean, we're just in a different era
We
of
are.
treating, and the children that Gene Ayers was treating is much different than the children we're treating today. So we have to change with the times as therapists.
Right. Right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. What do you foresee that like in the next, or what do therapists, clinic owners really need to be aware of to adapt with those changes in the next 5 years?
I think that we have to um, also be very conscious of um, the way that our environment looks. A lot of times it's not very organized. And I think visual organization and physical organization is also very, very important. Um, Also, safety. Children are having a lack of body awareness as time goes on, because they're only getting a lot of visual and auditory at school and at home. And it by amplifying and intensifying the amount of sensory input that we can get, we can make bigger changes to the central nervous system. I also am a big fan of doing intensives. We used to, back in Denver, do a lot of intensive therapy where the child, usually comes in once or twice a week for OT, and then once a month, they would come in for 3 to 5 sessions in a week. And I think that's a really great model for changing the central nervous system the quickest.
Okay.
So that's my 2 cents about, I guess,
Yeah.
improving therapy
So
over.
you're saying they would come in once a week, just like your traditional therapy, and then you pick a month where they're coming in? Is it just a week where they're coming 3 times a week, or every week in that month?
No, just that 1 week of the month.
Okay. And you're finding that just that intensive, that 3 days is enough to really kind of move them forward?
Yeah, so it depends on the insurance company. Sometimes you got insurance companies that only give, 50, 60 visits in a year.
Yeah.
So what you do is you give more frequency with the intensity and shorter duration of treatment.
Uh-huh.
And then you put the child on home programming so
Mhm.
that they can have better follow through and be more accountable for their home programming.
Let's talk about home programming for a second, because that's kind of what got you into where you are today, right? You were noticing that families weren't able to carry it over. What are some easy recommendations we can give our families to simulate, or to get some vestibular probe in the home? Or what are your go-tos, I guess?
Number one would be a crash pad. You can do it yourself crash pad, throw a whole bunch of stuffed animals inside of a duvet cover, throw pillows and bean bags inside there. That's a place where the child can, jump and crash into it, hide underneath it,
Right.
lay under it while doing their homework, get some deep pressure, jump, throw, and crash. So that's number one. I think that's easy to do. Number two would probably be the scooter board bungee area, if they have the laminate or wood floors.
Mhm.
So I like to use scooter boards. That's very easy, but that's why I always check with if I can get pictures of the family's home, then I can be more decisive about what type of equipment they should have for home programming. Because a lot of times, if you give the parent a handout saying, okay, do some animal walks with the child, what do? They tell the child, all right, I want you to do some animal walks.
Doesn't
Well, that
happen.
doesn't work that well. The child's like, I don't want to do them. That's
Yeah.
not fun.
Yeah.
So having the parents be part of the home programming, we need movement as adults,
Mhm.
and for them to do it with the child is always a plus.
Mhm. That is.
Also, oh, sorry, one more thing. Another thing is if they can't do suspension from the ceiling, there is a company called Brain Rich Kids, and it's a um, it's like monkey bars that basically you can go floor to ceiling and you don't put any screws into the ceiling or the floor. And it's a tension rod system where you can also hang up swings. I use Lycra and monkey rings, um, and camping hammocks and so on.
Okay, so it's like a monkey bar just by tension, right?
Yeah, it's a tension bar from floor to the ceiling, and you can do it inside of an apartment because it doesn't put screws in the ceiling.
How much does that run roughly? Do you know?
Anywhere there's like the lower side where it just comes off the wall, they go for I think like probably 4 to 700, and then the larger ones can be like 700 to 2,000.
Okay.
So there's also on Facebook they do resale of those too.
Okay. Awesome. So if you have a therapy clinic that really wants to change their environment and organize it, do you have do you have your go-to organizational tools, or, you know, things that you can hang up? What do you like to do for swings and all the equipment?
So I like to use vertical Rubbermaid containers. So ones that are, closed, that so out of sight, out of mind. What I like to think. You can also put J hooks on the inside where you can hang up swings.
Okay.
Um, and also I like to, depends on the infrastructure of the building. Sometimes you got metal studs into the walls, which a lot of commercial buildings have, and then older buildings will have wood studs. And the wood studs, easy to do. You can just screw right into them. But the metal studs, you have to reinforce the walls with like plywood or do some blocking behind on the inside of the walls. to make it more structurally secure.
Hmm.
And then you can do, swing hooks on the metal studs if you do like a rock wall. That's
Right.
always a possibility. So I like to have attachment points on the walls. So you can also hook up bungee or lycra, but you could also use it for storage. And then, those Home Depot buckets with the lids, those orange ones?
Yeah.
I like to use those as storage too. So you could print off a picture of, say, bean bags and put it on the outside so the child knows that's the beanbag bucket. And
Hmm.
then there's another one for, say, cones or whatever. I will also use another container, such as it's used for like storage for outdoor use. It's like a treasure chest.
Okay. That you put like your lawn furniture in.
Yes. So
Yeah.
you can have children climb on top of it and jump off of it.
Okay.
Also, the vertical Rubbermaid containers, if you get like the really sturdy ones, I will have children climb on top of it as like a platform, and they can jump off of it into crash pads.
Wow. I didn't realize they were that sturdy.
Yeah, it depends on the quality of the one that you get. So
Right. And then I'm sure anchoring it to the wall, right?
yes. So like I have one inside my home sensory gym where you can sit up on top of, you can play board games. It's a larger one, but having high platforms inside of sensory gym is, I think, a really um awesome way to do jumping and crashing off of for proprioceptive and deep pressure tactile.
Hmm.
And I also like to do sitting on top and playing board games.
Right.
It's a bird's eye view of the room, and it's a different perspective.
Mhm. Awesome. Let's say clinic had maybe $5,000 to spend on a space, or let's say they already have a swing. What other items would you say are like the key or necessary?
Uh, do they already have gym mats?
Yes, let's say they have gym
Okay.
mat.
All right. So they have a platform swing, say, with 1 point of suspension. They already have some gym mats. Um, I would say if they're able to invest in more suspension points, because I feel like if 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 I have a therapy clinic, I want to try to have at least 5 points of suspension, you know, just because. So I do like a die, so it'd be like, 4 1/4, uh, like a rectangle or square, and then one in the center. So that would be preferred, just because then I can do 4 point lycra. And then I always go on Facebook Marketplace and look up sensory and fitness equipment
Okay.
and see what's out there. So I like to look. Sometimes I'll look for swing set stuff or playground stuff too, and see what I can get, because people are selling rock. Say if it's a rock wall, sometimes people are selling 4 panels of rock wall for a couple $100. All you
Yeah.
have to go drive out there, take it down, and go bring it to your place. So Facebook Marketplace is one of my top go-tos when I have a smaller budget. Also, OfferUp I'll use, and then I'll go to thrift stores to find different things, because if you have a smaller budget, you have to be creative, and you can do a lot with it.
Hmm. Okay. Awesome. Um, Give me three of your favorite calming tools, both for clinic and home. One you mentioned was the crash pad for sure.
Uh, the other one would probably be uh, Lycra. I use it in all different ways. You don't have to just hang it up from 4 points. You can hang it up from two, three. You can hang it up from the walls. You can hang it up on angles. Um, so it's all about the environment that you're working in. Sometimes you're working in a room that's 12 by 15. Sometimes people are working in a large, almost like warehouse area. So I'll use Lycra as a way to use it as a divider wall to separate areas in the room. So that's one. The other thing would probably be um, camping hammocks. Camping hammocks are very accessible in any place in the world for $20 to $30, and you can use them to swing from, to climb up them, to pull things with. It's just endless the amount of things you can do with a camping hammock.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one would probably be trapeze bars. So I like to be able to hang up a trapeze bars from 2 or 1 point of suspension. And then also if your trapeze bars has little hooks on the bottom, you can also hang up swings that teeter-totter off of it.
Okay. Nice. Okay. Thinking about like if a clinic owner is going to get a new clinic, what is your recommendation? Is it for one big large space or smaller areas? Do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of times therapy clinic owners will just lease the space without even they're just thinking about maybe the parking lot in the waiting room. But really, number one is your sensory gym. So you need to look at if you want to suspend from the ceiling, you need to talk to a structural engineer. You have to talk to your contractor. You have to talk to your leasing agent before trying to think about suspending from the ceiling, because that is a big cost point if you can't suspend from the ceiling, that you have to do like a freestanding frame. Also, they think sometimes the larger the building, the better. Not necessarily, because then maybe the higher the ceiling, there's more echo.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to put some type of sound panels on the top to reduce the echo. Also, sometimes the larger the space, the more the dysregulated the child can get. So I like to think of a space, what would be perfect in my eyes would be for, say, one-on-one therapy and group therapy, not open play, but somewhere about 20 feet 20 feet wide, and then in an L shape. The reason an L shape, so it could be 20 feet wide by, say, 40, 50 feet long, and then turn another corner and go another 20 to 40 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So something like an L. And I will do Lycra walls to separate. So you could have
Mm.
4 treatment spaces in one room. So say if it's busy time and you want to have your own sectional of the room,
Right.
instead of doing like this panel wall, the
Right.
sliding panel walls cost a lot of money. And also it really divides the room where the kids can't interact.
Right.
But the Lycra wall, it's a visual barrier. But if you want to, and the kids are like interested in each other, you can just pull that Lycra wall back, and now it's like 2 big rooms in one.
Right.
So, but yeah, the being able to kind of really analyze the room before making that your permanent space is really important.
Right. I had not thought about the Lycra walls before. That's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, it works very well. I do it at every therapy clinic
Mm-hmm.
possible,
Mm-hmm.
and it I used it throughout my therapy clinics that I worked at, and it really made a huge difference on the way uh the kids were able to, like, I guess, be able to do individual treatment and then do group treatment together. Because sometimes you want to prep the child and get them regulated before they able to socialize.
Yeah. So the width of the Lycra, how high does the Lycra need to be?
So the width is always 60 inches or 5 feet.
And that's enough.
Yeah, so it's about, if you're doing it from as a wall, you want it to go low on the floor, so basically touching the molding,
Okay.
And then you want to get up to about, say, 7 feet, pull it straight across, and pull it. The lycra should be about 80% of the length of the room. So because lycra stretches, it has some spandex in it, and then for some reason, if it wasn't able to reach the other side, all you have to do is add bungee cord, and it'll stretch further.
Fantastic. Just little things like that are so helpful. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's awesome. Going back to your Sensory Digest, you do in-clinic trainings, and then are you also offering different courses or just those trainings?
Just the King of Swings workshop and webinar. So it's basically like I tailor it to what the environment, also what the equipment is, and the clientele. Because sometimes we're working with kids that have CP or low functioning autism,
Mhm,
and so I've worked with those type of clients. That's not my main clientele
mhm.
of children, but um, I try to help out therapists in any way possible. So I just work with what I got.
We're noticing a really increased trend in a lot more clients with on that low functioning side of autism, which can make the treatment areas difficult because they often can't, like they probably wouldn't tolerate being in a gym even with the lycra because they're trying to elope, and it's difficult to get engagement, let alone try and get them on a sensory piece of equipment. Do you have any advice or tools that you would recommend for that?
Yeah, so I it really depends on the child's functioning. Say if they're low functioning and they're stimming and they're very loud,
Mhm.
um, that's actually the the best time to get them in the lycra and do some passive input. So they just need to pull into flexion. We know
Okay.
that if we pull into flexion, a lot of times our nervous system will slowly calm down, and they're they're most of the children that are you know, low functioning, they're very extensor tone dominant. So they're just like always shooting into extension and using the startle reflex. So we really want to try to give some passive input and smooth rhythmic rolling or swinging to help calm their nervous system. A lot of times, what the lycra does is it pulls them and it makes their eyes converge, and it slows down their breathing at midline. So
Gotcha.
I will really work on that, and maybe even throw some pillows in there with them to just give them some more deep pressure.
Awesome. That's awesome. I
A
love
lot
that.
of times, a lot of times therapists will put them on a therapy ball and bounce them up and down, but what
It's
it's
more
really
intense.
doing is just shooting them more into extension.
Yeah.
And so you have to look at how the how it impacts their brain function too. So
Mhm.
I will also do other modalities of, say, using vibration,
Okay.
uh, using oral motor, doing various type of things, and also trying to do messy play recipes with them. So each child responds. Sometimes you throw an idea out there and they're just like, I'll
Yeah.
push it away. So that's why I have so many different tools in my therapy toolbox, because when you're working with a child with low functioning autism, sometimes it's not meaningful and engaging to them. So
Right. Right.
I pull out something else.
What do you use for vibration? Do you have a go-to?
I will use the Z Vibe.
Okay.
I will also use the hand vibrating massagers. I also have like a vibrating foot massager,
Uh-huh.
got from Goodwill, that works very, very well. I think we don't use vibration enough during
Mhm.
SI. I think that's really important. Also, I have another vibrating massager that's also heat activated.
Oh,
So so you can put like a heat button on it, or turn on the heat button while using it. We know that warmth can be very soothing to the nervous system.
Right.
I also have a vibrating pillow that when you hug it, it vibrates. And yeah, I
That's
think
awesome.
that's about it.
Yeah,
Oh,
we have a
also
vibration.
also the jiggler too.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, anything that I didn't ask you or that you have coming up you want to share?
Let's see. I have quite a few workshops coming up. I'm I have a sold out workshop in Dubai. It'll be my biggest workshop yet. It'll
Wow.
be 60 plus therapists.
Wow, that is big.
We'll be making an announcement for a 2025 Dubai workshop coming up here. I also have a workshop in Lima, Peru. And then Bend, Oregon. That'll be a private workshop.
Okay.
And then another private workshop in New York for a Jewish school. And then I have a workshop in Mexico City, my first one in Mexico, in December. January, I'll be teaching a workshop in Santiago, Chile. That's one of my favorite countries to go visit and teach in. And then I also have a workshop in Spain and South Switzerland,
Wow.
Puerto Rico, Brazil, North Brazil. And then I also am working with a therapy equipment company in Brazil again called Benu
Okay.
and Belo Horizonte. I'm actually teaching 6 days back to back inside their showroom. And then I will teach in South Africa next year. And I think that might be it.
Okay. That's amazing. Did you ever think that when you started out, this would be your life?
No, definitely not. I thought, I just wanted to do a hands-on therapy
Yeah.
workshop and maybe it would be okay in the States. I've thrown out probably 100 different ideas of business adventures throughout my lifetime, and they barely stick. Some of them don't even get any traffic, and then this is the one that worked. And
Yeah.
what's funny is when I came to go teach your workshop.
Hmm.
I forgot what year that was. That must have been
Gosh.
7 years ago or something
Yeah.
like.
Hmm.
I was working in Bothell, and I went to go teach the workshop in Oregon at your clinic, and on the way back, I was driving back home, and I'm like, oh, there's Gig Harbor, Washington, and it looks like a small town. I wonder if there's any therapy clinics there. So I pulled up into the therapy clinic and I said, "Hey, I was just in town, was driving through, and just want to check out your therapy clinic. I'm an OTA." And she's like, the clinic owner says, "Oh, our male therapist just quit last week. Would you like to work here?" I'm like, all right, can I see your sensory gym? And I looked and I saw I was wrapped in lycra. There was
You were like, yes, I do.
I literally sold my house the next week and
Wow.
then moved out there. Lois Kramer, she was colleagues with Rosemary White.
Oh,
And
right.
so Rosemary White did a sensory symposium in 1986, the year I was born, and Lois Kramer spoke at it in 1986. And I was like, well, I got to learn from this guru. So
Yeah.
I started working under her, and I worked under her for I think 6 years. And my workshops just started, uh, you know, taken over, and I couldn't just keep treating and traveling and teaching and stuff like that. So I decided to take a hiatus from treating for now, and now I'm just teaching the workshops and designing, and helping out families whenever I can.
That's amazing. Well, the therapy world is a much better place because you're out there and putting your stuff out there. So that's what people want is like, show me how to do it. I need to see it in action. And then it's
Oh,
like, oh, we're like kids. That's how we learn. We have to do it too. So
oh, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that.
yeah, well, I appreciate you being on with me today. And try and go back and listen and put out everything you spoke about in the show notes so our listeners can go do that. But Lycra, right?
Yeah, absolutely.